I still remember the exact sound that shattered my world. Not a scream, not a crash, not even a confession. Just a quiet little ping. A text message that lit up on my husband's phone while he was in the shower. I wasn't the type of wife who checked her husband's phone. For 15 years I had trusted James the way you trust the ground beneath your feet. Solid, steady, unquestionable. But that evening something gnawed at me. He had been slipping away in small, subtle ways, working late, weekend business meetings, a new obsession with grooming with his wardrobe with an energy I hadn't felt from him in years. All the cliches I told myself, all the signs I refused to see. But when his phone buzzed on our dresser, the screen flashing with a preview, my body moved before my mind could stop it. A message from his assistant reservation confirmed at Aria for Friday 8 p.m. She'll be thrilled with the private booth. My hands shook. My breath caught. Against every instinct I unlocked his phone. The passcode was our wedding anniversary. How ironic that the same date meant loyalty to me but convenience to him. What I found wasn't just dinner plans. It was an entire double life. Messages, photos, inside jokes. Her name was Claire. Younger, of course. Beautiful, of course. Married, too, because betrayal always seems to love company. And there on his phone were not just texts but plans. Future plans, trips, even whispers of an apartment. I sat frozen, clutching that phone like it was a weapon that had already struck me. 15 years of marriage suddenly felt like a carefully painted canvas ripped down the middle. And then I heard his voice, casual, warm calling from the bathroom. "Victoria, have you seen my blue tie?" As if nothing had changed. As if he wasn't crushing me with every secret message. I placed the phone back exactly where it had been and answered with a calmness I didn't feel. My voice was steady, but inside I was screaming. That night I lay beside him staring at the ceiling while he slept peacefully, and something inside me shifted. I wanted to shake him awake, demand answers, but I didn't. Because I knew he'd only lie. I could already hear his excuses in my head. "It's just business, you're overreacting. She means nothing." Lies layered over lies. So I kissed him goodbye the next morning, with a smile that tasted like ashes. And when he left for another so-called client meeting, I didn't go to work. I sat at our kitchen counter and opened his email, his calendar, his world. It was all there, laid bare. The dinner on Friday night at Aria. Not with a client. With Claire. The secret life of my husband penciled in neatly between presentations and court dates. But then something else happened. I found her husband, Michael Donovan. Handsome, successful, respected. Another life about to be shattered, another person living in blissful ignorance. My first instinct was to call him immediately, but then I stopped. A messy confrontation would give James and Claire time to cover their tracks, to spin their lies. No. If they wanted their secret dinner at Aria, then that's exactly what they would get with me sitting at the next table. I still remember laughing to myself, the sound hollow and strange in our empty kitchen. "You want dinner, James? Fine. I'll give you a dinner you'll never forget." I called the restaurant and requested a table near his booth, smooth as if it were for business networking. Then I crafted a professional-sounding email to Michael, inviting him to dinner under the pretense of discussing a lecture series at the university where I taught economics. He agreed, polite, enthusiastic, completely unaware that his wife would be sitting 20 feet away with mine. The 3 days that followed were the longest of my life. I moved like a ghost through our home, watching James through new eyes. How had I missed it, the constant checking of his phone, the whispered calls, the sudden spark in his step when her name lit up his screen. On Thursday morning over breakfast, he casually told me not to wait up for him on Friday night, too much boring client talk. I nodded, buttering my toast, smiling like a woman playing a role. But inside, I wasn't his naive wife anymore. I was something else, something sharper, something he had created with every lie, and by Friday the plan was set. Friday arrived with a strange calmness that felt almost supernatural. I woke up with clarity I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just another day. It was the day my marriage, my illusions, and perhaps even my identity would break open. I dressed carefully for the evening, selecting a navy blue sheath dress, professional, refined, but with just enough edge to remind myself that I was more than the forgotten wife my husband had relegated me to. I fastened the pearl earrings he had given me on our 10th anniversary, a cruel reminder of the man I once thought he was. And then, almost as an act of defiance, I slipped on the heels he once said made me look like I was trying too hard. Tonight, trying too hard was the point. By late afternoon, I had packed a small overnight bag and tucked it into my trunk. I knew deep in my bones that I would not be returning to the same home that night, no matter how the evening unfolded. I arrived at Aria 30 minutes early, my pulse thrumming like a drumbeat beneath my calm exterior. The maitre d' recognized my name, his eyes discreetly kind as he led me to the table I'd reserved. It was perfect, positioned with an unobstructed view of the private booth James had reserved for himself and Claire. I sat at the bar first, ordering a martini I barely touched. Every time the door opened, my chest tightened. And then he walked in. James, 15 minutes early. Nervous energy written all over his posture. He looked sharp, charming, every bit the man who had built a career on appearances. The man I had once adored. He was led to the private booth, his face carrying a lightness I hadn't seen directed at me in years. 10 minutes later, she entered. Claire. She was everything I had feared she would be, youthful, glowing, wrapped in a red dress that seemed to burn against the dim lighting. James's expression when he saw her cut through me like glass. The way he stood, the way he kissed her hand, the way his eyes softened, it was not the look of a man caught in temptation. It was the look of a man already lost. I might have drowned right there in my rage if not for the voice beside me. Victoria Hamilton. I turned to find Michael Donovan exactly as his photographs had promised, handsome, steady, a presence that radiated decency. He smiled warmly, oblivious to the knife he was about to feel sink into his back. I managed to return his smile and offered my hand. Mr. Donovan, thank you for meeting me. He insisted I call him Michael, and together we followed the maitre d' to the table I had so carefully chosen. From where we sat, the private booth was in full view, my husband with his hand on Claire's pouring champagne as if this was a celebration. My husband whispering into her ear, drawing laughter from her lips, laughter that used to belong to me. I forced myself to focus on Michael, on the polite conversation about architecture and economics. But every flicker of my eyes betrayed me, drawn back to the booth where my husband leaned closer to a woman who wasn't me. And then Claire rose, excusing herself to the restroom. This was my moment. I stood excusing myself from Michael with a smile I didn't feel. And when I rounded the corner, there she was coming back toward the table. For a heartbeat, we locked eyes. Recognition flared in hers. She had seen me before on James's desk in the photos he hadn't cared enough to hide. "You're James's wife," she whispered, the color draining from her face. "And you're Michael's," I replied, tilting my head toward the man still seated at our table. My voice was steady, though I felt the earthquake inside me. Her lips parted, trembling. "Please, not here." "Why not here?" I asked softly. "Isn't this the perfect setting? The beautiful restaurant, the romantic lighting, you've certainly been enjoying it." She reached for my arm, panic swimming in her eyes. "Victoria, I can explain." "Can you?" I pulled away, my voice cool but sharp. "Can you explain why you've been sharing a bed with my husband? Can you explain why you've been lying to that good man over there who has no idea what you're doing to him?" Her eyes glistened, a sheen of tears threatening to spill. "It's complicated." "It always is," I whispered. Behind her, I saw James notice us. He froze mid-sentence, color draining from his face. He half rose from the booth, caught between approaching and pretending he hadn't seen me. "What do you want?" Claire asked, her voice breaking. The questions stopped me cold. What did I want? Revenge, justice, to watch their carefully woven lies unravel. For a long moment I simply stared at her, my answer burning in my chest. Finally I spoke. "I want honesty. Something that's been missing from my marriage for longer than I realized." And then, as if on cue, Michael looked up from our table, puzzled by the scene unfolding. His eyes darted between us. He had no idea, not yet, but he was about to. The world seemed to slow, as though every sound in that glittering restaurant dulled to silence, except the pounding of my heart. James was standing now, panic etched across his face. Claire hovered between us, trembling. Michael had risen halfway from his chair, confusion knitting his brows as he glanced from me to the woman he thought he knew. And in that frozen moment, I felt the power shift. For so long, I had been powerless, blind, deceived, quietly enduring. But here in the warm glow of Arya's chandeliers, I held every card. James finally broke the silence. "Victoria, what are you doing here?" His voice cracked thin with desperation. I met his gaze without flinching. "Having dinner," I said evenly. "Just like you." Claire's breath hitched. She clutched her purse like it was a lifeline. James stumbled forward, words spilling. It's not what it looks like." I almost laughed. "Not what it looks like, James, please. We're far past that excuse." By then, Michael had joined us, his eyes darting between the three of us, trying to stitch together the pieces. "Victoria," he said gently, "what's going on? Do you know these people?" I turned to him, my throat tight, but my voice calm. "Yes, Michael. Allow me to introduce my husband, James Hamilton. And I believe you already know Claire." The comprehension that dawned on his face was excruciating to watch. Confusion melted into disbelief, then hardened into a grief so raw, it mirrored my own. His lips parted, but no sound came. Finally, a single word broke free, a dagger aimed at the woman beside him, Claire. She couldn't meet his eyes. The silence was enough of an answer. For weeks I had envisioned this moment. I thought satisfaction would come rushing in, that vindication would bloom in my chest as I watched their facade collapse. Instead, what I felt was a sharp, aching sadness, watching Michael's heart break in real time, reliving my own. The maitre d' appeared at my side, his voice polished but hesitant. "Is everything all right with your dining experience?" I smiled, a brittle curve of lips. "Actually, there's been a change of plans. Could you prepare a table for four somewhere private?" Minutes later, we sat in a small private dining room, the door closed behind us. The table stretched between us like a battlefield. James and Claire on one side, Michael and I on the other. The symbolism was unmissable. "How did you know?" James asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I met his eyes. "Does it matter?" His shoulders slumped. "I suppose not." Michael turned toward his wife. His jaw tightened, his voice hollow. "Were you ever going to tell me?" Her mascara streaked down her cheeks. "I don't know," she whispered. I leaned forward, my words precise, measured. That's the thing about affairs. They live in a fantasy world where choices never have to be made, where lies are enough. Until reality barges in. James looked at me then, almost with wonder. "You're so calm. What did you expect, James? That I'd throw a drink in your face, scream until they dragged me out, give you the excuse to call me hysterical?" My laugh was sharp. "No, I've had 3 days to prepare for this." Claire's head snapped up. 3 days? You've known for 3 days and you planned this." I turned to her, letting the silence speak first. "Yes. And in those 3 days, neither of you noticed anything different. James, you came home every night, kissed me on the cheek, pretended to care about my day. You looked me in the eye and lied about your client dinner. Without a flicker of guilt." "I didn't want to hurt you," James said weakly. Michael barked out a bitter laugh. "You didn't want to hurt her while you were sleeping with my wife?" The waiter entered quietly, placing water and bread on the table before retreating clearly, sensing the storm in the room. For a moment no one spoke, the weight of it all pressed down, suffocating. Finally Claire's voice broke the silence. Small cracked. "What happens now?" I reached into my purse, my hand steady. I placed a hotel room key on the table. "I've booked a room across the street. I won't be sleeping in our bed tonight, James. And when I come home Monday, I expect you to be gone. Take what you need for now. We'll figure out the rest later." His face drained of color. "You're throwing me out." "No, James. You threw yourself out the moment you decided our vows didn't matter." I turned my gaze to Claire. "He's yours now. No more secrets, no more stolen moments. Just the reality of a man who betrays when loyalty becomes inconvenient." And with that I stood. The room tilted around me, but my spine stayed straight. I walked to the door, then paused, my hand on the handle. "Dinner's on James's corporate card," I added softly. "You both seem familiar with the arrangement." And then I left. I walked out of Arya with my head high, though every step felt like walking through fire. Outside, the city hummed as if nothing extraordinary had happened, as if my entire life hadn't just cracked open inside that restaurant. The valet offered my car, but I shook my head and kept walking. My heels clicked against the pavement as I crossed the street to the Grand Meridian Hotel, where I had booked a room in advance. I wasn't going home tonight. Only when the heavy hotel door shut behind me did the weight finally crash down. The facade I had held together through hours of icy calm collapsed in an instant. By the time I unlocked my room, my hands were trembling so violently I could barely slide the keycard. And when the door finally closed, I fell to the floor. The sobs ripped out of me, raw and guttural, years of betrayal breaking loose. They weren't delicate tears, they were body-racking cries that left me gasping, my chest heaving against the ache of what I had lost. I cried for 15 years of a marriage I thought I had, for the home we built, the anniversaries, the whispered promises that now seemed laughable. I cried for the woman I used to be, the trusting wife who thought loyalty was enough. And beneath it all, I cried for the brutal truth I had been living beside a man who had carved out an entire second life while I held up the image of our perfect marriage. When the storm of tears finally slowed, I sat slumped against the bed, staring blankly at the city lights through the window. My body felt hollow, like I had been emptied out. But in that emptiness, something sharp flickered. Clarity. This was not the end of me. It couldn't be. A knock startled me. My heart stopped. I was sure it was James, come to beg or to explain. But when I checked the peephole, it wasn't him. It was Michael Donovan. His face was pale, shattered. His tie loosened, the weight of betrayal hanging heavy on his shoulders. I opened the door a crack, uncertain. "Michael, I'm sorry to intrude," he said softly, his voice hoarse from emotion. I couldn't go home. Not tonight. And I didn't know where else to go." For a long moment I hesitated. He wasn't my husband, not my responsibility. But there was something about the brokenness in his eyes, the reflection of my own pain, that made me step aside. "Come in," I whispered. We sat in the armchairs by the window, two strangers bound by the same wound. The silence between us was thick, but strangely comforting. Finally, he asked, "Did you know before tonight?" I swallowed hard. Part of me did. I felt him pulling away, becoming someone I didn't recognize, but I didn't want to see it. Not until that text. Michael nodded slowly. "Claire's been working late for months, weekend girls' trips. I trusted her completely. That's what makes it cut so deep." "They trade on our trust," I said bitterly. "That's the cruelest part." We sat for hours talking through the haze of our shared betrayal, about our marriages, about the lies, about the little moments that made sense only now. And then about ourselves, our work, our childhoods, even our dreams. There was something oddly healing about speaking aloud the things we had both buried for too long. By the time he left for his own hotel room, the night sky was beginning to pale with dawn. We had not solved anything. We were still broken, still reeling. But for the first time since I discovered that text, I didn't feel entirely alone. The next morning, the inevitable came. A frantic knock rattled my door, and this time it was James. Disheveled, unshaven, still in last night's clothes, his eyes wild with panic. "Victoria, please," he begged the moment I opened the door. "We need to talk." I didn't move aside this time. "Did you come alone? Or is Claire waiting in the car?" He flinched. "It's over. I ended it last night. It was a mistake, the biggest mistake of my life." I stepped back, allowing him in, but I kept my distance. He collapsed into a chair, running his hands over his face. "It wasn't real what I had with her. It was a fantasy, not reality." I let out a hollow laugh. "And that makes it better." "No, of course not. But Victoria, 15 years of building a life together. You can't just throw that away." "I didn't," I said quietly. "You did, with every lie, with every night you chose her over me." "I'll do anything," he pleaded. "Therapy, transparency, whatever you want. Just don't give up on us." I studied him, this man I had once loved so fiercely, now crumbling before me. But all I could see were the messages, the secret reservations, the apartment he had nearly rented. And I realized the truth. "You're not sorry you had the affair. You're sorry you got caught." His face collapsed, but I didn't falter. Some things James once broken can't be fixed. They can only be acknowledged and left behind. He sat there staring at me like I had spoken in a foreign language. "You're really done with me just like that?" His voice cracked, full of disbelief. I shook my head slowly. "Not just like that, James. After a year of you being done with me while pretending otherwise. After every night you came home and looked me in the eye with lies on your lips. After realizing the man I built my life around was capable of sustained, deliberate betrayal." He tried again, desperate. "What about our friends? Our families? The embarrassment of divorce?" I almost laughed. "That's what you're worried about?" "Embarrassment. Your reputation." "Our reputation," he corrected quickly. "We've built a life together. People respect us, look up to us." I let out a sharp, hollow laugh. "I've already taken care of that. I called your mother this morning, and your sister, and our closest friends. I told them exactly why I'm leaving you." The color drained from his face. "You didn't." "I did. For years I protected your image. I helped you build your perfect facade. But I refuse to be the villain in your story now. You wrote this ending, James, not me." His temper flared, then the mask slipping. "You had no right to tell the truth." I cut him off. "That's all I'm doing now, telling the truth." He stood abruptly, pacing the room like a caged animal. "This isn't over. You're upset, you're not thinking clearly." "Actually," I said calmly, "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. By Monday the locks will be changed. Take what you need this weekend, but I won't share a home with you again." His phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, then looked away too quickly. "Is that Claire?" I asked quietly. "Missing you already?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. "Go," I said. "She needs you more than I do now." When the door finally closed behind him, I expected to feel hollow. Instead, what filled me was something startling. Relief. Like setting down a heavy burden I had been carrying for years without realizing it. My phone rang. "Michael." His voice was soft, careful. "I just wanted to check on you. How are you holding up?" "Better than I expected," I admitted. James came by. "Claire's been calling non-stop," he said. "I haven't answered. I don't think I can." "What will you do?" I asked gently. He sighed. "I think I've known the answer since last night. I deserve better than someone who can lie so easily to my face." "Yes," I whispered, "you do." There was a pause, then his voice shifted. "Have you had breakfast? I could use a friendly face." I looked at myself in the mirror, puffy eyes, tear-stained cheeks, but something inside me felt lighter. "Breakfast sounds perfect," I said. The weeks that followed blurred into a haze of lawyers, mediators, paperwork, and painful divisions of a shared life. James oscillated between desperate pleas and vicious accusations, but I stayed firm. Claire left town within a month, unable to bear the whispers of our tightly knit community. Their fantasy collapsed the moment reality moved in. Michael and I leaned on each other during those months, not as lovers, but as allies, as friends. Two people who understood each other's pain without needing explanation. And slowly, friendship became something gentler, something hopeful. 6 months after that night, we walked along the river at sunset. The water shimmered gold, the air soft with summer. He turned to me, his voice low. "I never thanked you for having the courage to expose the truth, for not looking away." I thought about that. I didn't feel courageous, just desperate. "Whatever you felt," he said, "you saved me from years of living a lie. And maybe you saved yourself too." 1 year later, I ran into James at a colleague's retirement party. He looked older, worn. We exchanged polite words before he pulled me aside. His voice was quiet, stripped of bravado. I never properly apologized. Not really. I was too busy trying to save myself. But now, I know what I threw away. "I'm sorry, Victoria. Truly sorry." To my surprise, I felt no bitterness, only a distant sadness. "I hope you find happiness, James," I said. "You seem to have found yours," he replied, glancing toward Michael, who was laughing across the room with some colleagues. "I'm building something new," I corrected softly, "day by day." Later that night, walking home under the stars, Michael asked what I was thinking. I smiled faintly. How the worst night of my life somehow led me here. How sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what you really need. He squeezed my hand. "I'm glad you reserved that table next to theirs," he said with a small smile. "So am I whispered. "Because betrayal, I learned, isn't always the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the painful beginning of a better one." If this story touched your heart, if you've ever known the sting of betrayal, or the relief of finding your strength, I hope you'll stay with me, Like, share, and subscribe for more stories that remind us we are stronger than the lies that try to break us. And if you've ever rebuilt your life after heartbreak, I'd love to hear your story in the comments.